go back to the latest developments on the Russia-Ukraine war and get an assessment from someone who's been tracking this very closely. Joining me now is Peter Doran, an Adjunct Fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies and former president of the Center for European Policy Analysis. Peter, welcome back to Washington Watch. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Tony.
So what do you make of the latest in these talks led by the U.S. With Vladimir Putin? Is he stalling, or are we going to get to a place of a peace agreement?
For now, he's stalling. Let's recall, President Trump has positioned himself as a peacemaker. This is not geopolitics for him. It's personal. He wants to stop the killing. And what we saw in Moscow over the last 24 hours is that it's Vladimir Putin who is the main obstacle to peace. The United States has worked very hard to set up a peace proposal that, yeah, sure, not all sides will be happy, but all sides could agree to. And Vladimir Putin has said, "Niet." He's not going to play game. He's not going to play ball with President Trump. Here's the twist. Putin's play right now is to blame the Ukrainians for being the roadblocks to peace instead of Russia, which has attacked their country in the first place.
Peter, I was talking with some foreign policy officials on Capitol Hill last night, and some of them think it could be a couple of years. This thing could be drug out. Now, the one thing that is beginning to take effect, and I think if the secondary sanctions on India, China using this Russian oil are tightened, that could cut off the spigot of their funding for their war machine.
Well, that's correct, Tony. Let's recall that right now there are countries in the world. India is one of them. You correctly mentioned them. China is another. There are other European countries as well. They are paying Russia with energy revenues. Russia is using that money to fund its war machine. If we squeeze at Putin's weakest point, his energy revenues, that's the surest way to say, no, you must stop this war. We can cut Russia off at the knees by restricting its energy revenue. We haven't been effective yet, Tony, in doing that. But as you heard from Congress yesterday, it is possible. It is in our toolkit. That's what must be done now.
So, Peter, is the NATO chief in NATO, are they speaking out of both sides of their mouth, saying that, you know, hey, as European countries, we've got to put in more money into our defense. They want to see 5% into defense. But at the same time, they're funding Russia by buying the oil.
Unfortunately, that's true, Tony. Get this stat. It's disturbing. It should be disturbing to everyone. The Europeans have spent as much, the same amount of money that the Europeans have sent to the Ukrainians is about equal to what they have sent to the Russians since 2022, when this war really started heating up. So essentially, the Europeans are funding both sides of this war right now. That's got to stop. The United States must draw a clear line and say, no, we are going to sanction countries that are facilitating Vladimir Putin's aggressive war against the Ukrainian people. And let's remember, these are not random statistics here. Right now, Vladimir Putin has kidnapped 20,000 Ukrainian children, and yet we still see the United States sitting on its hands.
Thanks for bringing that up, Peter. I appreciate you bringing that up. I should have had that in my notes already. I've not heard that discussed in these conversations, even that the U.S. is leading. I mean, I've just not heard it.
Well, that's right. Let's remember, this war will not end until the kidnapped children from Ukraine are returned. The good news here, we saw today on the Hill, both Democrat and Republican senators and members of Congress, led by Senator Lindsey Graham, held a very significant hearing on this issue today. They laid out the facts, and what we heard was terrifying and disturbing. Essentially, Vladimir Putin and Russia have kidnapped 20,000 or more Ukrainian children, and they're holding them hostage. They refuse to return them. That must be a significant part of any future peace. And Tony, Vladimir Putin has said no to returning those children as part of this agreement. This is very disturbing.
That needs to be at the forefront of our conversation, in my view. I mean, we're talking about children, but human rights, and not. We didn't even get into the issue of really kind of a cultural genocide that Russia has engaged in the occupied territories, where they've closed the churches and they've expelled the pastors and scattered the flocks of many of these churches. I mean, that's an issue that ought to be a part of this conversation, in my view.
So we do have some indications that the Ukrainians have put that forward as part of a requirement for peace. But let's also remember, every one of these children has a name. Every one of these children has a family. And Russia, get this, is putting them into indoctrination camps. And for the older young men, they are training them to hate their families, hate their country, hate NATO, and preparing them to go back and fight on behalf of Russia against their former families and country. This is despicable, it's evil, and that is what we're dealing with. That's why the United States has the moral high ground here to say no to Putin and to force a just peace, a lasting peace on both sides. The Ukrainians are ready to agree to that.
So Peter, we have a minute left. What do you see as the most likely resolution here, the outcome of these conversations?
One of two things is going to happen, Tony. Either President Trump is going to take the bait, he's going to fall for Putin's tricks and decide that the Ukrainians are to blame for putting up obstructions to peace, or he's going to see through Vladimir Putin's play. I certainly hope President Trump sees what Vladimir Putin is doing. He is tapping President Trump along in the hopes that Trump won't understand. He's playing him, and that's got to stop.
Peter, always appreciate your candid insight and analysis. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.